Welcome to Leader Lifestyle Hub. As we have set the target of completing 200 book summaries in the entire year, here comes the book number 190. The name of the book that we have today is The Rise, Creativity, The Gift of Failure, and the Search for Mastery, written by Sarah Lewis. Without any delay, let us see the target audience, top 3 lessons, and the small synopsis. Target audience. The 45-year-old would-be entrepreneur looking to diversify income streams while wanting to leave their 9 to 5 job, or the 24-year-old filmmaker who wanting to create the next great cinema series, and every creative who wants to leave average behind. Let us see the small synopsis. The Rise explains the integral role of failure in all creative endeavors and provides examples of great thinkers who thrived because they viewed failure as a necessary part of their journey towards mastery. Let us listen from the Sarah Lewis himself. I still remember the shudder when I sensed a knowing as sure as fact that I might only truly become my fullest self if I explored and stayed open to moving through daunting terrain. Entrepreneur Sarah Blakely was conditioned from an early age to see failure as part of any learning process. Every night at the dinner table, Blakely's father would ask his children, would you have failed at today? This way, he taught them to see failure not as an outcome, but simply the result of one attempt. Just before the age of 29, after selling office equipment for 7 years, Sarah Blakely created Spanex, the girdle refining line of women's hosiery propelled Blakely to become one of the few of women billionaires who created wealth without aid from a husband or inheritance. In The Rise, the Sarah Lewis explains that part of Blakely's success rests on what psychologists call the Dunning-Kruger effect. Amateurs more willingly take risks because their ignorance protects them from fear of failure. In contrast, once proficient, we often see possible pitfalls and steer towards safety over innovation. Trial and error, however, lead us to places we never imagined going. Then, once nature's most skilled teacher, adversity, comes in, the wheat separates from the chaff. For example, did you know the great orator Martin Luther King overcame a childhood speech impediment? Means in his childhood age he was feared for giving speeches. Or that Samuel Morse toiled as a painter before inventing the telegraph. The Rise will insist you with a can-do mindset without glazing over the fact that bumps in the road are a part of the journey. Sarah Lewis curates personal, historical, and current day stories of individuals whose paths may not have been straight, but certainly inspire and encourage us to strive alongside them. Let us see the top 3 lessons. Of course, it takes more than just going against the grain. Here are the 3 lessons from the book to help you embrace failure as a part of the journey. Let us see the top 3 lessons. Innovation is non-linear, so keep pushing and learning until you break through. Second important lesson is take literal and figurative breaks from criticism to make room to take risks. And the third one is grit. Thick skin in the face of defeat will eventually lead us to mastery. We all have the potential to create and innovate. Parents, we have spouses, we have not spouses, only one spouse, we have employees, we have athletes, we have entrepreneurs, and we have CEOs. Let's discover ideas that will help us keep going when others giving up. Let us move on to the lesson number 1. Innovate work rarely translate directly to output, so you must relentlessly focus on what you can control. One person whose advice you will definitely won't want to take while failing your way to success is Homer Simpson. You have tried your best and failed miserably. The lesson is never try. Endurance, consistency, and persistence are requisites for mastery. If you want to cook mastery as a recipe, then these three are requisites: endurance, consistency, and persistence. At the same time, it's important that innovators and artists not get tied up in the perfectionism while pursuing a goal. When the author spent a day with the women's archery team from Columbia University, she learned such focus requires sustained mindfulness and intensity. The archer's paradox refers to the fact that although the archer could not control the weather, she has to factor in those elements before releasing the arrow. She must be willing to try again and again, whatever the environment dictates. Let us see who is this Sarah Lewis is for. Let us see who is she famous for. Sarah Lewis is an associate professor of history and architecture and African American studies at Harvard University. She has studied in Harvard University. Okay, let us continue. Mastery comes to those who are willing to shoot countless times while remembering all they can do is observe and give their best. Author Lewis Hyde said, work is what we do by the hour, but labor sets its own pace. We may get paid for it, but it is harder to quantify. Writing a poem, raising a child, developing a new calculus, resolving a neurosis, invention in all forms, these are all labors. Let me repeat the quotation. Work is what we do by the hour, but labor sets its own pace. You can do the same work in 8 hours, you can do the same work in half an hour. That is called labor. We may get paid for it, but it's harder to quantify. Writing a poem, raising a child, developing a new calculus, resolving a neurosis, invention in all forms, these are all labors. Let us move on to the lesson number 2. Mental and physical space away from criticism makers makes room for creatives to take risks. The gap refers to the space between what you have achieved and your potential to achieve more. While in the gap, it makes sense to separate yourself from your critics so that you feel safe taking risks. The playwright August Wilson wrote on napkins in restaurant. When a waitress asked him why he wrote on those instead of paper, he replied, because it doesn't count. Writing on something easily discardable gave Wilson the freedom to explore and crumple the napkin without judging himself. So instead of writing on paper and throwing it, if you don't like that, he wrote on the napkins so that someone might use that or someone they tear it after using it. Napkins or tissue papers. However, isolation must eventually come to an end. Otherwise, you will lose touch with reality. Florentine painter Pontormo spent 11 years working on a portrait in the 16th century. Neither the painter nor portrait survived such solitary focus. Criticism and pressure eventually play a crucial role in the growth of a creator and their projects. Leonard Bernstein advised to achieve great things, two things are needed. One is plan, and the second one is not quite enough time. These two are required, plan and not enough quite time. In the beginning stages, however, too much heat will burn out the artist. Whatever creative work you do, managing the gap between your actual work and your vision of what could be is hard enough. So, first, make sure you are satisfied with your work and then let the chips fall where they may fall. Let us move on to the lesson number 3. Using your critics to become better requires grit, but it is worth it. The director of Lewi University's world famous writing program has noted that the writers most likely to achieve success are not those with the most natural talent. It is the individual who sits down at the keyboard day in and day out every day. When one article, short story, or novel is complete, the pro writer begins the next project. They might glance back, but they will always keep moving forward. Any artistic or innovative endeavor leaves the creator open to criticism. It is impossible to please everyone. It is impossible to please everyone, especially when you are looking or when you are asking people to step away from long held belief, long held belief or way of doing things. In this context, grit means being able to listen to criticism, the gossips, assess its validity, and incorporate any relevant changes into the future works. As a painter, Samuel Morse spent years stretching the canvases, readying them for paint. He may never have become wildly successful in the field, but his experience eventually led him to transform stretcher bars into a telegraph machine. Over 20 years, he used every criticism to reframe the objects he was working with until he created something the world had never seen before, but that changed everything. Grit requires a mix of internal strength and environmental factors. Grit requires mix of internal strength and environmental factors. But at the end of the day, it is what truly encourages creators to keep going forward. The gritty artists or entrepreneurs or athlete is the one who will succeed for sure. Let us move on to the quotation that we have learned from the author. The Rise, Creativity, The Gift of Failure and Search for Mastery, written by Sarah Lewis. Here is the quotation from the author herself. I still remember the shudder when I sensed a knowing as sure as fact that I might only truly become my fullest self if I explored and stayed open to moving through daunting terrain. So if you want to truly become your fullest self, explore and stay open to moving through forward in every stage. And here are the top 3 lessons that we have seen. Innovation is non-linear. So keep pushing and learning until you break through. These are the 3 requisites for mastery. If you are preparing the mastery as a cooking food, these are the requirements: endurance, consistency, and persistence. And the second important lesson that we have seen is take literal and figurative breaks from criticism to make room to take risks. And the third one we have seen is grit. Thick skin in the face of defeat will eventually lead us to mastery. So, what you need is grit of criticism. Whatever the criticism you are facing, you need to stay grit. And there was a saying that here in the summary, we have seen that what have you failed at today? So, Sarah Blakely's father would ask his children, what have you failed at today? So this way you can make sure you can see failure not as an outcome, but it is simply the result of one attempt. So this is one of the powerful lesson. What have you failed at today? Ask yourself before going to bed tonight, what have you failed at today? Means what is the moment of failure that you have experienced on this day? As well as we have seen one more thing like writing on napkins instead of writing on paper. Why? Because that gives the freedom to explore and crumple the napkin without judging himself. That's what we have seen today, and we have seen the difference between work and labor. Work is what we do by the hour, and whereas the labor sets its own pace. It doesn't matter whether you work for 8 hours or 10 hours, the labor doesn't worry about that. Labor sets its own pace, and it is harder to quantify. What are the example of labor? Writing a poem, raising a child, developing a new calculus, resolving a neurosis, invention in all forms. These are all labors. So what we need? Work. Work is what we do by the hour. This is all about the book The Rise, which is stands for creativity, the gift of failure, and the search for mastery. And see you in another book another time. Until then, stay connected, keep progressing, do like, share, and subscribe.